Hello, I'm Mark Grayless, the Connections and Pastoral Care Minister here at First Christian. And it's great to share with you today on Truth Tuesday once again. You know, one of the greatest things of my childhood as growing up here in Brazil, Indiana, was after Sunday school, we would get home, and every Sunday I would get on my bike and ride to Clark's Sporting Goods store almost every Sunday, winter, summer, fall, whenever it was, and go in and just spend some time with a group of older guys that were there. I didn't realize it at the time, but they were doing something very important to my development, and that was called mentoring. You see, a lot of these guys were my brother's peers and my father's friends, but they always took time for me as a young person to invest in me and to share with me things that made them successful in the outdoors, made them successful in life, maybe even made them successful in business. And when I look back, I think I sure learned a lot from them, because in a very casual way, they had mentored me. The Apostle Paul tells Titus, he says in Titus chapter 2, beginning in verse 6, "Similarly, encourage the young men to be self-controlled. In everything, set an example by doing what is good. In your teaching, show integrity, seriousness, and soundness of speech that cannot be condemned, so that those who oppose you may be ashamed because they have nothing bad to say about you." And he was talking about the importance of being a good example, of being a mentor to people around you. And all of us can do that, whether we're young, old, or even very young. I can remember a young girl that I knew who read well as a first grader, and she went and told stories to kindergarten kids at her school. She took her talents and her abilities and did that. You say, what's mentoring like? It's like sharing a little bit of yourself with someone else. It's taking an opportunity to not preach to someone, but to encourage them or to give them some wisdom to make or do life better. You know, I had a lot of people come through my life, in my family, in my neighbors. I think of somebody says, "You're a good fisherman, Mark." And I said, I have a lot of friends to attribute that to, especially to Mr. Mercer, who was next door and a little older than my parents, but yet he took time for me as a teenager to really teach me how to be a bass fisherman and how to catch bluegills almost any time of the year. He invested in me, but he also taught me things about integrity and honesty and friendship that I just couldn't learn on my own. You see, the church is in a tremendous place in our world. We have an opportunity to be an influence to people all around us. Growing up in the church, I had guys like Harold and Jack who were always around me to tell me stories, to encourage me, and to boost me on in my spiritual life. And I sure appreciate those men because they gave me opportunities to do things that made a difference in my life and eventually made a difference in other folks' lives through the ministry I've been a part of over the years. But as a church, what can we do? It's simple. Find someone and share your life and your faith and your energy with them. When I was at Union Christian Church, we had a gentleman who was divorced and had a set of triplets. And the ingenious ladies at Union Christian put together a mentoring plan for these ladies. And once a month, 3 different ladies adopted one of these girls and took her home to spend Sunday afternoon. There they would visit, and they would bake, and they would make crafts, and they would do all of these things as they mentored them because their mother wasn't in the picture most of the time. But the difference it made on their lives, I know exists today, because we ran into one in a fast food place a few months ago, and she says, "You don't recognize me, but here I am." And she was so happy to see us again. In another church, I had a man named John who had 3 of the boys that every teacher at school knew their name. Not for good things, but for bad things. And every Sunday, John would bring these young men to church. And they would be in Sunday school and junior worship. And he brought them because he wanted to show them that they didn't have to be like their family. Their father eventually murdered their mother. And they grew up a very rough life. But John invested his time and his energy in these young men to hopefully make a difference in their life. You say, what does it take to be a good mentor? It takes a little bit of time, but not a lot of time. On a Sunday morning, it may only take 2 minutes to walk over and to speak to someone, to ask them how their week was, or to find out a little bit about their life and what's going on. Because that little investment of yourself builds a connection with that person and allows you to be a person of influence with people. It takes seizing an opportunity, living outside our world. I can think of one young man that every Sunday in the 1960s, when my dad walked into church, he made a beeline to him. His life and his family was a mess, but my dad was a stable person every Sunday to share with him and to encourage him about living his life. Remember, too, that when you're a mentor, you're a person of influence. You may be the one person that makes a total difference in someone else's life, whether they're young or old or in between. Christ has called us all to be an example to people around us. Seize the opportunity by getting out of your seat, walking across the room with a smile on your face, an extended hand, and say, how are you? How are things going with you today? And you may be just the person to make a difference in their life, not just for this moment, but for eternity. Have a great week. We'll see you again in a few weeks on Truth Tuesday.